This week on ANN, the Seventh-day Adventist Church appoints an Ebola response coordinator.
Passionate youth share the gospel to thousands of homes in the U.S. state of Arizona.
And the denomination submits a friend of the court brief for a freedom of religious speech case that will be argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court.
These stories and more coming up.
This is ANN, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
First in the news, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency last month appointed an Ebola response coordinator who will help the Seventh-day Adventist Church and its numerous entities respond to West Africa's Ebola outbreak. The agency hired Elizabeth Folks to serve in the newly created position for a term lasting at least 3 months. Folks holds a master's degree in global health from Loma University's School of Public Health and previously worked on the international health team at World Vision US. Folks will coordinate better response efforts between the Adventist Church's Health Ministries Department, ADRA International, ADRA offices throughout West Africa, Loma Linda University, and Adventist Health International.
ADRA's been involved in the Ebola response for a number of months, and there's some ongoing response with ADRA Liberia. Right now they're working on programs both to educate communities around Ebola awareness and hygiene and sanitation practices to reduce transmission of Ebola. They're also working with survivors of Ebola to distribute essential supplies, basic food, clothing, hygiene supplies that are needed by Ebola survivors and their families right now. ADRA Sierra Leone is working on some projects to disinfect and decontaminate living quarters of people who have been infected with Ebola and have gone on to treatment centers. So people don't want to come back to infected living quarters, so they're providing new bedding and they're decontaminating all the living areas. I encourage people first to visit adra.org/Ebola, and there are opportunities on there to learn more about our response as well as to contribute financially. I'd also like to solicit everybody's prayers for our team here, for our teams in the field, for people who've been affected by Ebola. There's a lot of support and wisdom needed for this response right now, as well as to just keep talking about Ebola, keep these stories going. There's a lot of amazing stories of hope and overcoming and survival from some of the Ebola survivors, and those need to be told and those need to get out there. It's not just yesterday's news, it's today's and tomorrow's news too, so keep these stories going.
Also in the news for the church's response to the Ebola crisis, ADRA Liberia distributed 800 Christmas packs last month to Ebola survivors and their families in 5 counties of Liberia. The packs are also known as solidarity kits and contain disinfectant, soap, clothes, bedding, and cooking pots. The kits also have enough food to last for approximately 2 months.
Thousands of Adventist youth and young adults were recently encouraged to rattle the world with the gospel during a 5-day spiritual conference in the U.S. state of Arizona. The At the Cross conference was organised by a Generation of Youth for Christ, or GYC. According to the Adventist Review, attendees visited more than 100,000 homes to share literature and offer prayer. The supporting ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church was formed in 2002 by a group of college students who sought a deeper relationship with Christ and an active life in His service. World Church President Ted Wilson encouraged attendees of the 12th Annual Conference to remain faithful to Christ. Wilson said, "Through Christ's righteousness and grace, we can be faithful because He is faithful." Through a video greeting, Adventist Youth Ministries Director Gilbert Kanji applauded GYC for its dedication to service and invited attendees to participate in Global Youth Day, the Church's upcoming day of service.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church submitted an amicus brief, or friend of the court brief, in support of petitioners in a case that will be argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court next week. The case of Reed versus Town of Gilbert will examine the Arizona's town's restrictions on religious signs that limit size, placement, and duration compared to ideological or political signs. In the brief, the Adventist Church explained the dangers of allowing local governments to decide which forms of speech deserve more protection than others. Todd McFarland has more.
This is a case that is of extreme importance to religions, churches, and all people of faith. And it has to do with what restrictions cities, municipalities can put on speech. In this case, a church, a small church in the city of Gilbert, Arizona, was renting from a local school, and they wanted to put signs up indicating that their church services were being held on Sunday. Unfortunately, the city of Gilbert had an ordinance that really restricted the size of these signs, really down to sort of like a yard sign that you would have. However, if you were putting signs up for other topics, like say political candidates, you could put up much, much larger signs, and you can lead them up for longer periods of time. The temporary signs that were put up for a church had to be smaller and left up for a shorter period of time. So the Reed and the church there sued the town of Gilbert. What happened was the lower court said that that was not what's known as a content-based restriction. And that's what it really comes down to, is can a municipality say that people are talking about political speech get to put up larger signs and people are talking about religious speech who have to put up smaller signs? And this is important for religion, because oftentimes when making a claim for religious speech under the First Amendment, you're arguing that they're discriminating on the basis of the content, that they're preferring one type of speech, in this case political speech, over another. And to lose that tool in the sort of the war chest would be a big blow to religious liberty for the church.
Humanitarians and church members in the Philippines rallied together to address the needs of families who were displaced during a massive fire. On January 1, the fire in the southern region of Quezon City damaged 200 homes and affected 4,000 families. Volunteers from ADRA Philippines, along with members from Frisco Adventist Church, were able to distribute food to 500 families.
It's not too late to join the church's global prayer campaign. The 10 Days of Prayer initiative began January 7 and will end on the 17th. This is a time to spend uninterrupted time in prayer with your family, friends, and community. Visit 10daysofprayer.org for more information and resources.
Coming up, remembering the lives of a volunteer ministry co-founder, a director of ADRA field offices, and a former Loma Linda vice president.
God poured out His Spirit in Pentecost power after His church spent 10 days together pleading for His promised blessing. He is ready to do it again today. Experience the renewal of the Holy Spirit by following the disciples' example. Participate in 10 days of prayer, January 7 to 17, 2015.
We went to Africa in 1990, my wife and I, as the director of ADRA, Adventist Development Relief Agency, building schools, operating health centers. But none of us knew what lay ahead there with this genocide in 1994. With the choice that Teresa and I made, that I would stay and she and the children would evacuate, we were hoping to make a difference in the lives of the people in our home and perhaps in the country, never knowing we'd have an opportunity to speak on a larger stage and to let people know what happened around the world. To speak to teachers and students and let people know that, you know, one person can make a difference. No matter where anybody is on the globe, they are somebody, and that somebody is actually part of me. We are in desperate need to actually see ourselves there so that we can be making really responsible and lasting decisions.
As I was reading The Great Hope, I came across this passage that was inspiring to me. It says, in the Bible, the sacred and enduring character of the relationship that exists between Christ and His church is represented by the union of marriage. The Lord has joined His people to Himself by a solemn covenant, He promising to be their God, and they pledging themselves to be His and His alone. This brings me hope because as I view my relationship with Christ, and if I choose to view it as He does in a marriage, there is a certain level of commitment. There's a covenant there. And the fact that He chooses to view that covenant so strongly is a promise to me that I have the chance for eternal salvation. It's humbling. It's a blessing.
I pray for that I hope everybody to be good every day. I pray that I can listen to the teacher and I can learn. I pray for my dog because he's in pain, and I pray for my dad's back.
Welcome back, and now for more news from our global church community.
Last month, the Adventist Review reported the deaths of 3 Adventist leaders of various ministries and entities. Dolores Slickers, the co-founder of Maranatha Volunteers International, died in a car crash in a hometown in the US state of Michigan. Slickers was also a philanthropist who helped shape Adventist policy. She was 85. Hubertu Muller, who was also the leader of ADRA offices on 4 continents, passed away after a 3-year battle with brain cancer. The Argentinian native was 65. And W. Augustus Cheatham, the longest-serving Vice President of Loma Linda University, died after an 8-year battle with brain cancer. Cheatham was also an education official in the administration of former US President Jimmy Carter. Cheatham was 72.
Mr. Cheatham held a very important role at Loma Linda University Adventist Health Science Center. In that particular role, he would be the person to deal with many crisis moments, both from people coming onto campus, public media, etc., and issues on campus. I remember him for his calmness in crisis. I never recall the man being disturbed because of a crisis. He was always calm, very competent, very considerate, a very resourceful person. You could come to him with a need on the spur of the moment, and just like that, he could resolve it in a remarkable way. He was a gift to us.
Church leaders and members in Azerbaijan recently celebrated a milestone for the Adventist Church in the nation. During the 120th anniversary celebration, attendees packed the venue to hear musical performances and messages on how to live victoriously through Christ. Representatives of various faiths also participated in the program by sharing their appreciation for the church. The Adventist Church in Azerbaijan has more than 500 members.
More than 6,000 people on the island nation of Vanuatu were able to receive the gospel message through a citywide evangelism series in Port Vila. During the culmination of the 11-day campaign, nearly 10,000 people witnessed the baptism of 543 people, which included the baptism of a 106-year-old woman. The series was also broadcasted on the local Hope Channel network. A similar campaign was held on the island 4 months ago and resulted in the baptism of more than 2,000 people. The numerous evangelism efforts in the nation resulted in a record year of baptisms for the territory.
A Seventh-day Adventist institution is preparing to offer courses to prepare future ministers to effectively serve urban areas. The Washington Adventist University will soon offer courses to students who are also participating in an Adventist evangelism school in the U.S. state of Pennsylvania. The Reach Columbia Union Evangelism School ministers to students in the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States. The joint effort between the 2 entities will provide students with a unique experience in metropolitan ministry. Ivan Williams shares why it's so important to train future ministers how to serve urban cities in North America.
It's important for our pastors to be trained in urban ministries because that's where the majority of the people live, and we're trying to reach them. And pastors who only know a rural ministry or a ministry that doesn't involve the city or the urbanization of the world in which we're trying to reach, they're going to be out of touch. So it's very important for them to understand the nuances and the differences of living in a high-rise, or someone catching the bus to work or riding a train, or how to reach people who go to an internet cafe daily. So those are some of the reasons.
And finally in the news this week, the The Church's Northern Asia Pacific region recently celebrated two major initiatives that took place in its territory. In Korea, the Adventist Church welcomed more than 700 people who attended a 6-day evangelism series. The campaign focused on what the biblical books of Daniel and Revelation say about the earth's future. In Mongolia, the church celebrated the opening of a dormitory to address the need of rural students who cannot afford to live in the college dorms. The leaders of the Adventist Church in Mongolia believe the facility can also serve as a centre of influence to spread the gospel. The church also celebrated the groundbreaking of a youth training centre that will help equip Mongolia's newest missionaries.
Still ahead, learn more about the slow motion video feature on the iPhone.
But up next, find out what's in the latest edition of Ministry Magazine.
I grew up in a family with 4 children, right? When you have that many siblings, it's easy for somebody to be always taking your things, stealing your property. It's your books, your toys, seconds at the dinner table, or the comfortable chair in front of the TV. It became our custom to throw our hands up in the air and put boundaries around our things and scream, "This is all my property. Go get your own stuff." It's an interesting idea, ownership. What belongs to me? What belongs to you? How do we know? Everything belongs to God. Everything. Not some things or some people or some parts of the world or some planets or some galaxies. Everything. Everything belongs to God. So everything belongs to God, and then God asks us to join in caretaking, taking care of each other, of our earth, our resources, our potential. I've always thought this is terribly risky on God's part. Why not just throw up your arms and mark off your property and take care of it yourself? No, God asks us to get involved. The longer I do life with God, the less I realize I don't have a right to things or people. I do have a responsibility. I sense a shift from competition to cooperation. You know what? This is a much larger and rewarding way to live life.
One thing that really overwhelms me is the fact that, I don't have a job. How am I going to provide for my family? During that time, I recall trusting God to direct my path in this. Prayer is the exercise of faith, and by it daily, God bestows privileges upon us.
Welcome back. Derek Morris shared a preview of the current issue of Ministry Magazine.
Hello, I'm Derek Morris, editor of Ministry Magazine, and I'm excited about the January 2015 special issue of Ministry. The topic, the Sabbath. The lead article by Sandra Duran is an article that will bless your life. A day of rest and gladness. The prophet Isaiah encouraged us to honor the Sabbath, but also promised that when we discover the true meaning of the Sabbath, we will delight ourselves in the Lord. So I want to encourage you to read that lead article by Sandra Duran in the January 2015 special issue of Ministry Magazine. If you receive Ministry as a hard copy, you'll notice there are many other wonderful articles that will challenge you intellectually and inspire you and deepen your spiritual life. If you don't receive the printed copy, you can go to our website at ministrymagazine.org and read Sandra Duran's lead article. Jesus said the Sabbath was made for our benefit. It is a time of blessing and healing. And in this special issue of Ministry, you will find articles that will help you to discover the true meaning of the Sabbath. Again, you can see them at our website, ministrymagazine.org. It's my prayer that this coming Sabbath and every Sabbath, you would experience the joy of the Lord.
For this week's Tech Corner, Andre Brink shares how you can use your iPhone to shoot videos like a pro.
In the video world, the best shots are always those that have some kind of movement. I'm not talking about the awful zoom that home movie producers often use that cause great distress to viewers of their final masterpiece. Filmmakers often use tracking shots where the camera physically moves from left to right or right to left on a track, or so-called dolly. Another popular shot is where the camera slowly moves into a scene. Take note, the camera is physically moving forward and it is not the lens that is being zoomed. Filmmakers also use expensive cranes and other equipment that takes ages to set up to get these kinds of shots. But what if you didn't have all that equipment and all you had was your phone? When I got my iPhone 5S a year or so ago, I was happy to find the slow motion function where the phone shoots video at 120 frames per second. If you play it back at normal speed, you will get a slow motion video that is 4 times slower than real time. Simply by holding the camera like this and moving it along as steadily as you can achieve shots like this. Plan where you will start your shot and where you will end it. Then try and get a steady footing and move the phone quite quickly. You need to move the camera at this speed. If you move it too slowly, then the video will be far too slow. Try it with different scenarios. It also helps to be on some kind of transportation that is moving. Here I was on a boat and managed to capture these runners who came running over a bridge. These shots were taken out of a bus window. The trick is to hold the camera as steadily as you can. Add some movement to your shots. It will make a world of difference.
I recently sat down with filmmaker Nathan Nazario to discuss the film Old Fashioned. The film will be released Valentine's Day weekend. Hi Nathan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell me your role behind the movie Old Fashioned?
Sure, I am the lead producer of a film called Old Fashioned, the premise of which is a former frat boy whose relationship with Christ impacts the way that he looks at life and relationships. His name is Clay, and we have Amber, who is a free-spirited woman who has felt the sting of pain in relationships, and together they attempt the impossible, an old-fashioned courtship in contemporary America.
Nice. What was the inspiration behind the movie?
Well, our writer-director and male lead, Rick Swartzwelder, heard a very interesting story several years ago. He heard a story about a man who would not be alone with any woman other than his wife. And that sparked the idea for Old Fashioned. And Rick went further. He started doing research. He interviewed women from all races, backgrounds, religious beliefs, and he asked them 2 questions. The one was, describe for me your perfect date. And women responded with things like, well, he's got to have nice teeth, a nice car, a nice stereo system, and other superficial things. And then he asked another question, and he said, describe your perfect mate. Well, he has to be faithful, he has to be loyal, he has to be good with kids. And so those 2 lists consistently were very, disparate lists. And so that was the spark and the genesis for the screenplay for Old Fashioned.
Nice, because nowadays it seems old-fashioned, when you say it, it's kind of like a negative thing. Like you don't want to be old-fashioned in the sense. So was that kind of a reason for pursuing this sort of film?
Well, it's interesting. Old-fashioned does have connotations, both good and bad. And we're not advocating that everything old-fashioned is good. But when you look at things that are classic, like the 10 Commandments and God's Word, and other values that we have embraced as Seventh-day Adventists, those are the values that we wanted to shine in this film.
So would you say Old Fashioned is more geared toward millennials, like young people who are really influenced by the media, or is it something that all people can enjoy of all ages?
Here's the interesting thing that we found is that the film really plays across all ages. There absolutely is something there for millennials. We now live in a hypersexual culture. And based on a recent study that was done, the question was asked for people who describe themselves as Christians, is sex before marriage okay? Over 60% of the respondents said yes. And so we have a divorce rate in the church and outside the church that is well over 50%. Both those factors indicate that there is a problem in our approach to relationships. There is a problem in the way that we treat each other, the way that men treat women, the way that women treat men, and the lack of respect in those relationships. We need to do better. And if we can spark a conversation that deals with those issues in a very public forum, we believe that is healthy and will help to lead people to wellness.
What's one takeaway that you hope everyone who goes to see Old Fashioned will get from the movie?
We hope that people are inspired and motivated to bring God into their relationships, whether that be with their significant others or with their friends. If we can create a desire or spark a desire for people to see that, here's the universal truth. Jesus is the answer, and Jesus is all you need.
To learn more about the film, visit oldfashionedmovie.com.
Now let's turn to David Trim for a look at Adventist history.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. On January 4, 1875, Battle Creek College, the first Seventh-day Adventist higher education institution, was dedicated. It evolved from a private school established in 1868 by G.H. Bell. By 1873, enrollment was more than 100, and in March of that year, the 18th General Conference session voted to establish and own a college and to raise money for a dedicated building. By the end of 1874, an astonishing sum had been raised, $54,000, the equivalent of around $14 million today. Here you see a picture of one of Battle Creek College's first catalogs, listing the faculty and all the courses offered. The college evolved, changed its name, and moved from Central to Western Michigan, but still exists today as Andrews University. Also on January 4, but 57 years later in 1942, the first nationwide Voice of Prophecy radio broadcast took place to the 89 stations of the Mutual Broadcasting System. HMS Richards, legendary evangelist and the Voice of Prophecy's founder, later said that this broadcast, the first Adventist radio program to cover the United States coast to coast, was the greatest thrill of his career in ministry. And from January 5 to 15, 1884, the first camp meeting in Australia was held at Middle Brighton, southeast of Melbourne in Victoria. Among the speakers was Ellen White and the General Conference President, Ola Olson, who was then on a world tour, itself a first by a GC president. That was This Week in Adventist History.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
In the meantime, join our global conversation on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can connect with other Adventists worldwide through more stories, photos and videos. Visit Facebook/Adventist News, Twitter/Adventist Church and Instagram @Adventist Church.
Our good news for this week comes from Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. The passage says, "So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will find grace to help us when we need it most."
That's our program for this week. And remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.